Hey, Alexa.
Hey, how are you?
All good. This is
Hey
Alexa.
there.
This is Paul. Paul, Alexa.
Hi,
Alexa.
Paul. How are you? Nice to meet you.
I'm good. Nice to meet you as well.
Nice. All right. So we'll give it a few minutes as people get in, and we'll be able to go from there. Hey, Jeff. Welcome.
Hey, thank you. Now I have a face with the name.
Nice. Awesome.
How
Where's
are you guys doing?
where's Apogee Brewing based out of?
So we're out of Pismo Beach, California.
Sweet.
You know that area? We're on the Central Coast. We're kind of between LA and San Francisco.
Okay. Awesome. That
And
makes
I'm
sense.
Jeff, and this is my partner Everett.
Hey, Everett. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Everett runs the money side.
Nice. So we'll give people 2 or 3 minutes before we get started. Hey, Simon. Hey, Ted. Hey, Nolan.
Hey, Austin. How are you?
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Austin.
Hey.
Austin, you can finally meet Paul. Paul, meet Austin.
Hey, Paul. Nice to meet you.
Hey there. Nice to meet you as well.
All right, nice.
Let's see.
Hey, Bruno, welcome. Hey, Nolan.
Hey, how are you guys?
All good. Looking forward to it. Hey, Bruno, thanks for joining.
Thank you for the invite.
All right, cool. So let's get started. Just gonna mute everyone, and then Paul and I can be unmuted, and we'll be able to go from there. So, hi everyone. My name is Pulkit Agrawal. I'm the founder and CEO of Beer30 by the Fifth Ingredient, and it's gonna be a really cool webinar today. So I'm gonna go ahead and screen share, and we'll dive in. So today the focus is really on the importance of real-time data and real-time monitoring. Joining me, we have Paul, who is going to be introducing himself in a moment, and really the objective today and some reminders. So if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We are recording. We'll be emailing out a copy, and we'll be emailing out a copy of the slides as well. So that way, if you're interested, you're more than welcome to reach out, have chats later on with either myself or Paul, and we can go from there. So today, just a quick background. So I started off the Fifth Ingredient back in October 2017. The idea really being that the 4 ingredients in beer, water, malt, hops, yeast, and the 5th ingredient is data. And everything really focused in on using data to help breweries really improve their processes, focus on efficiency, and the overall profitability and quality side of things. Right now, Beer30 is in over 450 breweries across 19 countries. And just really looking forward to talking more about the data side of things and why real-time data monitoring is so important, along with the data validation piece. Cool. Now over to Paul.
Yeah, so my name is Paul. I work in a company called PLAATO. We started about the same time as you, Pulkit, in 2017. Really been focusing on data. Also really understanding the aspect of that missing element when it comes to unlocking the capabilities more data give you. And we are, of course, talking about fermentation. So yeah.
Awesome. All right, cool. So with this today agenda, we're going to first get into why does real-time monitoring matter? And Paul is going to get into more about PLAATO. Then I'm going to get into why does real-time data validation matter, and getting more into some of the aspects of breweries' health and the importance of data that ties in, and really what is Beer30. We're then going to talk about the integration between Beer30 and PLAATO, and then really get into any questions that you may have. So with that, let's dive in. Paul, over to you.
Perfect. I'll share a presentation. Let me see here. There we go.
Awesome. All right, cool, man.
That works. Yeah. Perfect. So yeah, we're all about the data-driven fermentation. As you initially said, Pulkit, we're gonna go through a bit on the importance of the data, what they can expect from having it, and how it can benefit basically everyday operation. I like to start off with a small one like this, because this is really a kind of a mantra in our company, where we truly believe in this, and I am quite sure that many of you guys as well think the same. And yeah, it's a good saying and a nice thing to remember, the magic of fermentation. I'm going to go through really quick on the PLAATO Pro, which is the device that we offer as the unlocker to the inner workings of fermentation vessels. This device will give you access to real-time gravity and temperature readings. We are using a 1.5 tri-clamp connection, so any typical sample port works well. Plug and play, of course. We also have a remote access on the data through iOS, Android, web, and of course the integration to Beer30 that we're going to go through a bit more. And the device itself, we have been in quite a few breweries, and we understand the amount of water and basically how challenging the environment is there. So wireless, waterproof, and CIP compatible. This is the basics of the system. So basically have on the left side a sensor that is installed in the tank, and on the right side we have the software that we supply, which is mainly focusing on the fermentation aspect that really allows you to dive deep into what's going on with the fermentation. With the integration to Beer30, it unlocks a bunch of different features that Pulkit will go through a bit later today. This is the device as you see it here, all stainless steel, waterproof, and ready to be installed in most fermenters out there. I'm now going to go quite quickly through the phases of fermentation, and the reason for that is that we will be ending up in how this data can help you take better decisions every day. So I'm going to start off with the phases of fermentation. I'm sure all of you are well aware of these things, but it's just nice to have a small recap. So typically we talk about the lag phase. That's you fill up the fermenter, pitch the yeast, and you're waiting for the yeast to start converting sugars into ethanol and CO2. And then you have the exponential growth phase, which is where the cells are really starting to multiply up, and you see this exponential growth in terms of how fast the yeast and the kinetics of the tank is going forward. And then you have a stationary phase where the line is more of a linear curve. And this is where the majority of the sugars will be converted into alcohol and CO2 as well. And then the decline phase where the yeast the fermentation activity is slowing down, and finally we have the end of fermentation. So looking at these, we have quite a few different events during a typical fermentation like this. Just for reference, on the left side, on the y-axis, you see the specific gravity, and then time on the x-axis, just following a typical fermentation curve. So now I've added the data into the PLAATO software, and back to the actual events, like how can you benefit of having this data? So one of the things would be, for example, to verify the start of fermentation. So if you don't see that the SG is starting to drop, that might indicate a problem with the yeast, with the recipe, or with the system. And one of the functionalities that you could benefit from here would be to get some sort of push notification that it is not progressing as it should. And that would typically be if the temperature in the tank is too low, for example, that you forgot to set the glycol chiller to the correct temperature and the fermentation doesn't kick off. We have quite a lot of customers using spun valve. There are a few different schools here. We see many that aren't using a spun valve at the beginning of the fermentation, and they only use it at the end. So in this particular case, you could add a notification that will tell you when the extract has reached a certain level, and you can move over to the tank and then start spunning the tank. In a lager, you will typically do diacetyl rest, and I'm sure quite a few of you have done it a bit too late before the fermentation is done, resulting in a potentially insufficient diacetyl rest. So we do, one of the functionalities here would be to say that you have a notification when the SG or extract has reached a certain level, and you go ahead and increase the temperature to start the diacetyl rest. Dry hopping, if you want to do a more of a hazy style, there are a possibility to add the hops while it's still fermenting. And we do see that that extracts a bit more of the particles. And again, you could get a notification when it's time to dry hop, when the fermentation is still a bit active, but not all to the end. And then one of the more important thing is the verification of the FG. More or less that the beer is done and it's ready to be moved over in the next phase. Typically cold crash and then lagering before the next phases of the production. Cold crash and then, yeah. So a bit back to the software. We do supply with the PLAATO Pro, the sensor itself. We have the data available on most typical platforms, iOS, Android, and also on the right side you see the web app we have. So this allows you to dive deep into what is going on with the fermentation itself. One of the functions we have, for example, is the compare batches, where you could add, say you have a house pilsner and you would like to compare the two. You could add them, and as you see on the right side here, this is an actual comparison of two different beers or two different batches, but following the same recipe. So normally we do see like quite different, some differences in kinetics and some differences in just how it operates. So this tool will allow you to analyze a bit deeper in the variation of the different batches you have. So what we've kind of understood here now is that timing is key in terms of consistency in brews. So, and this is how we believe data is able to really make you take that extra step in learning what is going on inside the batch, and utilize the data in making good beer every time. This is the presentation for the PLAATO itself. We will have a small questionnaire at the end. So if there's any questions about the technology or how it works, reach out and I will do my best to answer. Yeah, over to you, Pulkit.
Thanks, Paul. Any questions from anybody on the call regarding the PLAATO sensors and kind of getting into some details about it? Anything that somebody wants to ask, feel free to unmute yourself and we can go from there.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, in that case, I'm going to switch over into more about the data validation piece associated with it. So if you can all see my screen at this point, yeah? Good, awesome. Nice. So today's session in particular from a data validation piece is really going to focus in on a brewery's health, looking at quality and efficiency. And really when it comes to all this data and looking at these particular aspects, a lot of people get really overwhelmed with understanding where do I start. And so with that, we're going to dive into 3 areas of data management and really looking at some of the issues that tie in with that. We're then going to look at actually organizing the data, which is usually the second question that comes up when we look at data validation. This ties in with awesome 3 steps of brewery analytics. From there, we talk about what actions can I take today. So really, this is a fun 4 Ps to brew better beer and brew more beer that we'll get into, that hopefully anybody watching today's webinar can actually look at actionable takeaways and actionable things that they can do at their brewery when it comes to the actual data validation piece. And then finally, looking at, again, what is the metric of success? And we'll tie this in right back with the areas of data management, but this time looking at it from a solutions perspective. So with that, let's get started on the first aspect of brewery's health. And so really there's 3 key areas of quality, efficiency, and sales. And when you start really breaking this down, in present day, we all know that complacency kills a brewery, right? And if you really break this down across 3 areas, what you're looking at is from a quality perspective, you need to keep customers happy. If you have beer that isn't up to spec, doesn't taste that great, you're going to potentially lose those customers because they're literally 10, 15, 20 other breweries just walking distance or in your neighborhood. And so that's probably not going to be a good thing if your quality isn't there. From an efficiency standpoint, you need to have more of the output, but in the same time that's there, right? The key here ends up being that not all of us have the capital to get more tanks or, get more time that we actually have for fermentation. And so you need to be more efficient. That's one of the cool things about the PLAATO Pro is that because of that real-time gravity monitoring, you're saving time when it comes to the labor of taking those samples, but also really focusing on efficiency. If you can see where those gravity trends are, you could even look at shaving off a couple days in fermentation and really being able to become more efficient in your processes. And that's one of the reasons why with Beer30, we love having PLAATO integrated because it gives us that flexibility. And then finally, sales. You need to grow your profit margins. And the only way to grow profit margins also includes of knowing what the actual costs themselves are. So with that, let's actually talk about where do you start when it comes to data management. So we are all trained to capture data, notes on paper, spreadsheets, whiteboards, but it can be overwhelming to really understand how to use that data, right? And really when you start thinking about it, the question is, what can you do to actually start tracking the data? And the first thing is you got to figure out what are the issues that you're actually experiencing at your brewery. And with that, the 3 areas that usually come to mind are process inefficiencies, high process costs, and poor quality and inconsistency. So if we start breaking this down, an example of inefficiencies is that production planning issues result in tanks sitting empty or full for extra days, right? Anytime that you have beer that's not in a tank, that is money that is just not being fermented, quite literally. You have redundant paper logs, whiteboards, end of shift emails, spreadsheets, or you're having a lot of extra hours that are being spent on brewing, filtering, or packaging just because there's an inefficient system that's there. From a process perspective, you have delayed reactions that occur because issues happen during brew, ferment, filter, bright tank, package, or with the yeast itself. There's extra costs that happen when it comes to grains, hops, cans, bottles, supplies. And a lot of times, a lot of breweries don't have their cost of goods sold really outlined properly, right? And so unknown COGS is a really big aspect of high process costs. From a quality and inconsistency side, you may have to destroy a tank that is out of specification. Customers are unhappy and they go to a different brewery, or the brand reputation as a whole is also tarnished. So again, ways to think about that quality and inconsistency piece that have an impact on everything that's happening from a day-to-day perspective. From there, we look at actually shifting to organizing this information. So really, the objective from today that I hope everybody leaves from is that the feedback from the data should really be the aspect that's being used to drive business decisions. And what that means is that data management really impacts the daily operations. And what that then looks like is that when you have poor data management, it's just very time consuming and difficult. And when you have good data management, in theory, it should be fast and clear, right? And so with this in mind, there's a huge importance of power as well as flexibility that comes by organizing the data. But again, it can be so overwhelming for people to understand how do you organize it that we've come up with the 3 steps of brewery analytics. So with that, we have collection, transformation, and prediction. So what this really means on a day-to-day is that when you're collecting the data, track as much data as possible on the process side. Again, brewing, fermenting, filter, bright tank, package, yeast. Then you want to really understand what's estimated versus the exact readings. And from there, you validate the instruments they use to measure. So in this case, if you're measuring gravities manually, or if you're using the PLAATO Pro to measure, you really want to make sure that you're always validating that those instruments are calibrated correctly, and that you're really sure that, hey, this is an approximate reading, or this is the exact reading of pH, gravity, temperature, whatever else is being utilized. From there, you want to take the data and transform it. So organize that data into tables, rows, columns, create graphs and visual representations of the data, right? Paul just did a really excellent job of showing how to utilize that fermentation graph. And it's only when you can visually see it that it means something, right? Otherwise, all of us are just looking at a big spreadsheet with a bunch of numbers and it doesn't really impact anything, as opposed to when we actually end up showing graphs and the visual components that tie in with it. And then from there, we can actually look at the accuracy and precision for each data point. Again, accuracy and precision are not the same thing, but definitely focus on what you can do to get both axes and both accuracy and precision all squared away. From there, prediction. Hey, use the past data to make inferences on future events. Provide success metrics and compare data points to those standards. And then focus on tolerances and validate each brew. What that means is you should really understand just how your beer is deviating from that gold standard, from that perfect brew, from that quality aspect that you care about, and being able to predict on day 2 or maybe on day 3, based on how fermentation is trending, whether or not it's going to hit that same gold standard from a process prediction perspective. From there, let's talk about what actions you can take today. Well, the first one, in general, use brewery data management software systems, right? And if you use something like Beer30, here's a good module overview. It's very a la carte. You can pick and choose with things like the production suite or getting into inventory COGS, sales, accounting, MRP, demand planning, or then onto the quality side of quality modules, sensory, fermentation testing, sales traceability, barrel aging, or then third-party integrations like with PLAATO. And so these are all different aspects that tie in from a Beer30 perspective, and you can go a la carte to pick what you need. But really what comes next is that for each area of your operations, you really want to start setting standards. And with that, this is a fun little 4 Ps that come to mind of proactive validation, predictive analysis, process improvements, and performance indicators. So when we really start diving in, let's actually look at examples of each of these. So proactive validation. Here's an example of a brew sheet. And with that, when you actually look at things like critical brewing specs, you want to set tolerances for each of those critical brewing specs, and you want to provide the user with instant feedback, right? If I look at this, for example, and I see that my strike water temp is at 165, while my target was 145 degrees Fahrenheit, it's red. And that should immediately alert people via text or alert people to say, hey, we need to do something different because there's going to be process issues that happen if we don't actually address this. And so with that, again, use color coding, right? The standard green, yellow, red traffic signal color coding. And the key here is that everybody should be alerted real time as things are deviating. Now you can use this same logic on the fermentation side, where you can start seeing what those readings are for gravities, temperatures, and really start doing more with your tank sheets. You could even then, if you don't have a PLAATO Pro sensor, and if you're still manually not using a software system, you could even graph out those key metrics on a graph paper, right? But the key is to really visualize each of those batches on top of one another. And the cool thing that happens then is when you actually start going to the predictive side, you then start getting these really cool graphs like this charts on gravity. And what you're able to start doing is comparing batch 90, 91, 001, 002, 003. And you can really see here that there's a tight spread with gravities and the day number around the 1069 specific gravity. And this is a great example of where the PLAATO Pro comes in to be able to really showcase just how different batches are aligning. And that data can also feed directly into Beer30. And this is an example from a Beer30 graph. Paul, feel free to add in here for sure.
Yeah, and thanks, Pulkit. This is really what you're showing right here is more of the basis of the PLAATO Pro. So with the ability you have in Beer30 to visualize the graphs, it is really easy to understand the variation. And what you're showing right now is really the batch comparison feature. And one of the differences that we would see from using manual sampling versus the PLAATO Pro is also the granularity. So having the automated method with the PLAATO Pro, you will have a updated gravity measurement every 30 minutes. So the graph would be smoother, and you can also use what we talked about previously about the ability to get alarms in real time based on what is happening in the fermenters.
Yeah, great call. Thank you, Paul. Yeah, for sure. And so that becomes an aspect here. So you can see these are manually entered into Beer30. And so when you look at that, this is being done almost, during knockout, then on day 1, day 2, day 2.5, day 3, day 4, something. So again, that's not as consistent or as clear as you'd like when you're looking at it every 30 minutes, for example. There's also the obvious operations costs of having somebody go in, take a sample, then put it into all the process to actually measure the gravities, pH, temperature, etc., as opposed to having it done automatically real time. Yeah. And so with that, same thing applies for pH, right? Beer pH acts as a flavor. And really, if you have a wide pH, that means that your beer is not going to be consistent. And again, in this case, this is ranging from 5.1 to 5.9, which, we had a customer that experienced this. And for them, it was really that the water coming in from the city was changing over time. So again, external variables not even tied in with your brewery are having an impact on your beer because, as we all know, water and beer pH are key when it comes to making good quality beer. Moving on with process improvements, this is some aspects of just Beer30 and just data management that you really should focus in on the cost of goods. So really use the batch costs to understand efficiencies, include things like grains, hops, adjuncts, yeast, packaging supplies, even some of your aspects like labor and rentals, and really making sure to include the final landed cost for shipping, taxes, all the different items that go into it. And once you really have those particular costs, make sure you're able to compare them between bottles, cans, and kegs, right? You really want to be able to understand from a data perspective that, hey, my 24 pack of bottles is costing me $14.77, while my half barrel kegs is $90.42. And so really being able to break that down to understand just what your sales should be in order to really use that data more efficiently. And finally, from a traceability side, if there's ever a product recall, being able to understand what's going on when it comes to batch traceability, lot numbers, consistent quality metrics, and really being able to drill down if anything ever goes wrong. From there, this is one of my favorite slides that really dive in on performance indicators. And a lot of times people know these as KPIs, key performance indices, key performance indicators. And this is just an exercise. If anybody ever wants to learn more about them, shoot me a note. Always happy to dive in on how to use KPIs for your brewery. But just for today, I put together 18 different KPIs that I think are very helpful. So we start off with minutes per brew, total brewed, understanding the liter per barrel, total packed, again, liters over barrels, brew to package yield, yeast health, sensory, true to brand that ties in with your beers, gravity and the pH, dissolved oxygen CO2 levels, ABV percentage, IBU color, cash flow from a dollar perspective for your brewery, scheduling changes, tank residence time. Again, a key aspect that ties in with the PLAATO Pro of understanding just what is that tank residence number? How often is your tank full? How often are they empty? On-hand inventory and the dollar values, marketing conversions from any exercises that you're doing, on-hand inventory dollar values, sorry, that's a duplicate, finished goods, cost per liter, barrel, gallon, and then sales projected versus actual. So again, 17, ignoring the duplicate of 13 and 15, but all tying in with just KPIs that should be utilized. So from there, really just to wrap things up on my end of success with the actual data side, what we then look at is let's revisit with those examples what we just talked about with those areas of data management. And now in those same 3 examples, we have improved efficiencies, we have decreased process costs, and we have improved quality and consistency. And what that really looks like is that, hey, you're maximizing your tank and your equipment utilization. That really means you're avoiding buying more equipment. You have real-time process reports, and you're really streamlining communication by removing redundant paperwork. On the cost side, well, you're proactively monitoring process outputs, downtime, schedules, real-time alerts. Like with the PLAATO Pro, having a real-time alert if gravities aren't going up to spec and what you've been planning out, right? That all ties in with decreasing those process costs. Improving recipes to optimize ingredients, and really knowing your exact cost of goods sold for each beer. And then finally, from the quality and consistency, really when you break it down, each of your beers probably has well over 300 data points across all the batches, right? When you start breaking down every single ingredient, raw materials, brew data, ferment, filter or transfer, bright tank, carbonation, packaging, like all of those collectively are well over 300 data points that you need to be tracking. And really, when you start assessing that information, you're ensuring customers consistently drink high quality beer, and then you have the repeatable product that ensures brand loyalty. So again, just some examples of data management with those solutions. So with that, any questions on the Beer30 side before we get into the integration between Beer30 and PLAATO, or any questions that dive in with just real-time data validation? Nope. Okay. All right. So integration. Paul, I'll kind of let you take on this slide and kind of explain more about this.
Yeah, definitely. So a bit kind of the reason, what we just went through with you in Beer30 shows quite an extensive system where you will be able to keep a track of so many of the different aspects of a brewery. In PLAATO, we really try to focus on the fermentation. And this is why the software that we are building is much more focused against the data analysis of the actual fermentation and what is going on there. But we do see the benefit of having everything in one system. And this is where the integration comes in. So from day-to-day operation, it is nice to have a single system where you can keep a track of the fermenters. And if you do have a PLAATO and use the integration, you can use the Beer30 system software, and you will get access to the most critical data, allowing you to take these daily actions. So there are definitely benefits of each system, but the integration is really what ties it together and allow for that streamlined process that Beer30 has already built as a foundation into their system. So that's the main kind of reasons for really pushing on integrations from our side.
Yeah, great, Paul. That's awesome. Yeah, and just explaining that as well, just adding on one more piece, is that the PLAATO Pro has its own really robust software system. And so that's one of the key aspects, is that you can use both in parallel to kind of bridge the gaps where then Beer30 gives a whole picture, while then PLAATO is really giving you all those details of that real-time analysis to understand what's going on. So we have a number of customers using both right now. And, you know, if anybody is either on the just PLAATO side and wants more details about Beer30, feel free to let us know. And if there's anybody on the Beer30 side that wants more details about PLAATO, again, reach out as well. So that's pretty much it on our end for the presentation piece, but we'd love to have questions. If there's anything people want to talk about, open forum right now, and let's just have a conversation.
Hey, this is Jeff from Apogee. So I use PLAATO religiously, and it's having the real-time data has saved my butt a lot. But you talked about integration of pH with PLAATO, and I wasn't quite sure how that flows.
Yeah, so right now we do not have pH or the ability to measure pH in real time. And although I would love to have it, I'm very glad we don't, because there are so many challenges just technically with having an inline sensor that measures pH. But one of the abilities that would potentially be out there is also the basically the ability you have in Beer30 of tracking pH in the software on the go when you do the manual samples of pH.
Okay, that makes sense now. I was getting excited. I thought maybe you guys were working
I understand.
on real-time pH.
Yeah, great call out, Jeff. And I apologize if on my slides it made it seem like it was integrated. In this case, you can see it's PLAATO gravity and PLAATO temperature, but what you can do is you can still take your manual ratings in Beer30, so you can still add in things like gravity, or you could add in dissolved oxygen, or you could add in any of these other manual pieces that tie in and have the graphs overlay on top of each other, so that way your manual readings are also showing up just in line with your other PLAATO readings as well.
Excellent, that makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah, for sure, Jeff. Great question. Anyone else? Other questions on the call? No?
I just got a notification that the ability to add a manual measurement of pH in the PLAATO system is also going to be in a availability, allowing you to have a we will not be measuring it in real time in line, but you will have the opportunity to add it, and that will obviously also be then part of the Beer30 system.
That's super great news, because right now I do it on 2 separate spreadsheets.
Yeah, exactly. And this is what we're trying to avoid.
Yeah, for sure. And Jeff, definitely happy to chat more about that streamlining and integration piece when you're feeling up and ready for it. Cool. Nolan.
One question I have here, when in regards to the PLAATO Pro, because I know it has its own interface, as you know, of course, syncs to Beer30. Is that sync like in real time, or something that's like on Beer30, for example, lags behind?
Right now, the way the integration is, I believe we're able to set it up where I believe it's every 4 hours that the data is being pushed through to us, Nolan. And so we've deliberately kept it that way, where the idea isn't to duplicate every 30 minutes, because obviously that's just a lot of redundant data. But the idea really being, well, if we do every 4 hours, that's enough for 6 readings a day, which should really give you accurate information as to how that data is trending. And you can always dive in on the PLAATO side if you really care about that.
PLAATO Pro side. Right on. Thanks for the answer.
Yeah, for sure, Nolan.
Gents,
And
it's
best
Frederick
way, I
speaking.
guess, no, fire away. I'm
Yeah, Fricky, go for it.
A quick question. I joined the group based on the fact that I bought some PLAATO scales and the PLAATO airlock, and I was told that there'll be some highlights on the software going forward. How is that going to be for not the pro version? I'm just starting off as a home brewer at the moment. Is this software any useful for me with the PLAATO airlock?
So we have separate systems for our B2C offering the homebrew products and the B2B and the PLAATO Pro, where the PLAATO Pro is using a basically fundamentally different software system. So right now it is not possible to use the homebrew equipment on the PLAATO Pro platform.
Okay.
And this is not something we plan to do either, because it is two fundamentally different technologies and product lines.
Okay. If there's any chance, then if you could just private message me with regards to the future of the software for those products,
definitely.
please.
We are holding a webinar about the B2C products and the platform as well. So I'll get in touch with you and we'll take the details there.
Okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Other questions? Nolan, did you have another one that you were going to ask about?
No, it's all good. Thanks. Oh, I guess the next one, I mean, obviously, we don't have PLAATO Pro yet. I was interested, and that would be what would be the next steps? Yeah, I guess looking at potentially placing an order.
Yeah, cool. Paul, that's entirely up your camp as to.
Yeah. That's for us.
I have a question.
Yeah. One sec, Hillary. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Hillary,
so I've been.
Hillary, one sec. Yeah. So Nolan, what we'll do afterwards is we'll send up a follow-up with the video and the PDF of the slides. And so with that, that'll have Paul's information and my information as well. And so Paul will be able to follow up directly with your team as well to be able to get the sensors and some more details about that.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, for sure. Hillary, go for it. Thank you.
Yeah, so I've been looking at PLAATO since it was on Kickstarter. Did you start off on Kickstarter or something like that? Yeah. I've been homebrewing like for 10, 11, 12 years, something like that. I'm just wondering, like, what's the next step? Are you going to like implement some machine learning or AI, as you call it, into it?
There are a lot of talk about AI these days.
I know.
I mean, it's AI has a lot of good capabilities. We are definitely looking into how that could make life easier and better and improve the quality of data and basically one example would be the ability to predict end of fermentation or other crucial aspects about the fermentation. As of right now, we do see that just having the ability to get real-time data of the fermentation is amazing in itself, and really allows you to make have a better workday basically. So the quick answer to your question is yes, we are looking into it. We are looking how we can understand more using the data we already have.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, I love your product. I haven't still bought it, but one beautiful day.
Yeah, this is like understanding more about this, talking with the brewers, getting feedback. This is really one of the most important thing when it comes to any functionality, if it's AI or smart notifications or predicting end of fermentation or whatever it is. Like this is what drives the innovation. So feel free to come with any suggestions.
Yeah, I'm just glad that like what I really hate about the fermentation process is that I need to take tests, and yeah, that's always a bitch because you always have a spill and stuff like that because I brew on in my kitchen, and yeah, it's not that nice. And with PLAATO, that mess can be yeah, unhandled.
Yeah, thank you, Hillary. That's great. There's a question that came in through the chat from Simon. No microphone. I have a question for Pulkit. Do you have any plans in the short midterm for other automation solutions for QC data, such as automated brewhouse, BrowCon, for example, or automated canning lines or other sensors, Anton Par's inline solution, etc.? So the easiest answer to that is right now we integrate with a number of other providers as well. On the packaging side, we have OFS, which is a packaging downtime sensor company. So that one goes in real time. We also integrate with a lab company out of the States in Denver called Firmly. So that QC data comes through as well. When it comes to some of these other aspects, we do have different APIs that are set up. And so if there is any interest from other providers, like recently we had Decam Firmacraft in Australia that reached out and we got their integration as well. So I think, Simon, it really just comes down to understanding what the problem is we're trying to solve, how many customers are experiencing the same problem, and then we're always open to doing more and more integrations as well. So feel free to reach out. And if you are, Simon, a Beer30 customer as well, just ping us on WhatsApp and we can have a follow-up. And if you are interested in learning more about Beer30, feel free to reach out as well and we can have a follow-up about that too. Awesome, thanks. All right, we have about a minute or two more. Any other last minute questions before we wrap up here? No? Cool. Well,
yeah. Following the question from Simon, do you have it's for Paul, do you have any equipment to measure the carbonation?
Yeah, Paul, maybe.
Yeah, no, I would just we do not offer that, but Pulkit, there are definitely technologies out there.
Yeah, there would be the carbonation side, but Bruno, nothing for real-time carbonation tracking on our end.
Yeah, it would be nice if we can track and close the valves for CO2, just to dissolve oxygen to. I know it's going to be expensive, but it's going to be handy. Sure. And another Paul, but it's not an integration. I don't know. We don't have as Nolan told you, we don't have it yet, the PLAATO Pro. But I would like to know how to clean that, if it's easy or not. Since there is a electric thing, we cannot on the caustic how to clean that thing.
So I guess this is the one of the aspects that we had in mind from the very beginning of the development. The probe itself, the sensor of the PLAATO Pro, is made of 100% stainless steel. So that's the only material that is in contact with the beer. And that basically allows you to keep it installed when you do the caustic CIP. We do see that quite a lot of customers take it out and make sure that the gaskets are clean, but this is best practice regardless. So, but you can keep it in and just run it through typical CIP, and that will be it.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Awesome. All right, well, that's time. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Paul, for coming on as well, and looking forward to a follow-up email with all this information, PDFs, and we'll be able to go from there. Thank you all for joining. Happy Tuesday and Happy New Year.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.